So she's not given a name until much later on, where she's addressed as Puranjani when she marries Puranjan. From the allegorical perspective, she represents material intelligence. So we'll see that she actually represents material intelligence in the mode of goodness, and mixed mode of goodness and passion, but there is a component or mode of goodness. And in the allegory, there are different aspects of her features being described. That she was walking Chaya without any engagement, indicating that the initial contact of the jiva with material intelligence is without cause. She had 10 servants, which were the 10 senses, the 5 working and 5 knowledge senses. And each of the servants had hundreds of wives. Each of the senses had unlimited desires. She was protected by 5 snakes, which are the 5 life fears. And she was looking for a husband. Essentially, she was looking for a jiva. And there's description of a nose, which is nose and teeth and forehead and ears, which essentially is the interaction of the intelligence with the various objects of the senses. So the next part in the allegory is essentially the interaction between Puranjan and the woman. Okay, so we'll begin from verse 25. Tamahalalitam vira savrida smita shobhana snigdena panga punkhena sprishta pramod brahmat bruva. Puranjan, the hero, became attracted by the eyebrows and the smiling face of the very beautiful girl, and was immediately pierced by the arrows of her lusty desires. When she smiled shyly, she looked very beautiful to Puranjan, who, although a hero, could not refrain from addressing her. So in 20 verses, from this verse to 44, is the interaction between Puranjan and the woman. Essentially, it is a description of the interaction between the jiva and material intelligence. And the allegory helps because it kind of helps us understand that how does the jiva become conditioned? How does the jiva, which has perfect knowledge, become overcome by imperfect knowledge? So we see that while the woman is loitering, she does not approach Puranjan. Puranjan is the one who becomes attracted by her. So the jiva, by his own free will, becomes bound by the function of material intelligence, which essentially is, from a spiritual perspective, it is ignorance. Now, this also shows that the Lord does not bind the jiva by force. And this allegory will explain more about how this relationship gets established. Now, we see that the lady, because of her affection, is constantly glancing at him. And the verse says with lusty desires. And Puranjan is described as Veera. So Veera means courageous. And in this context, Veera means that he's courageous in his pursuit of enjoyment. So what does this indicate? That ignorance shows itself to be the object of enjoyment. The jiva accepts himself in the role of an enjoyer. So he considers that there is some enjoyment in ignorance, and he pursues vira. So he courageously pursues this enjoyment. Now the Lord knows that there is no enjoyment in this pursuit, but he is unwilling to interfere with the free will of the jiva. So Prabhupada says that there are two types of heroes. So Veera, as I mentioned, is hero. So there are those who become famous for their material accomplishments. And Prabhupada talks about the debilitating influence on such men. That men who become very powerful are also very likely to become excessively attached to women. So sometime back I was reading an article. So Washington, D.C., so I live in the D.C. area, and it's also considered to be the scandal capital of the country. So there are many cases of people who are influential, powerful, basically in some kind of a scandal with the women, with prostitutes. And this person who wrote the article, he was basically trying to correlate it more from a material perspective, that the kind of people who are attracted to the DC area are those who have political ambitions. So they are people who aspire for power. And the same emotion essentially translates to a strong desire for relationship with women. And so that's why so many promising political careers. Bill Clinton, of course, is a famous example. He was able to survive it. But so many other prominent, George Stephanopoulos, he was like a rising star. And there are gory details, but so many careers are destroyed because of this. So Prabhupada makes the same point, that people with power become excessively attached to women. He speaks about historical figures like Anthony being attracted to Cleopatra, and then he gives the example of this king in Marathi King Baji Rao, who was attracted to Mastani. And he said generally powerful men, he talks about Vishkanya, they're used as political weapons to kill powerful men. So that's one kind of Veera. Then there are those who are Veera because they have conquered their senses. And he said they are the real heroes. Prabhupada says Goswamis. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes that a living entity is not forced to come in the material world. He makes his own choice, being attracted by beautiful women. So what we'll see is Prabhupada will kind of mix metaphors over here. So the beautiful woman over here is essentially material intelligence. And the reason the jiva falls down is because he's attracted by the pleasures that the material intelligence offers. One of them is sexual pleasures, but many other pleasures that happens. So what we'll see in the purport is that Prabhupada will also comment on the metaphorical story. So when Narad Muni talks about the infatuation of men with women, then Narad Muni is talking about it from the perspective of the allegory. that men are infatuated with women and conditioned jivas are infatuated with material intelligence. Prabhupada talks about that. But then he will also go and talk about the phenomena of men being infatuated with women and how spirituality is the cure for it, right? So it's not that Srila Prabhupada is confusing the allegory for reality, but at the end of the day, Srila Prabhupada is writing this purports for our benefit, for preaching purposes. So it's the Acharya's prerogative to basically use these for our ultimate benefit. So in this particular case, when Narad Muni speaks, he just speaks in terms of the metaphors. Later on, he will expand on it, but for the entire story, he just speaks in terms of metaphors. When Vishwanath Chakravarti comments on it, he will, at each and every verse, he will also talk about what do the metaphors represent. When Srila Prabhupada comments on it, he will not only comment on what the metaphors represent, he will also use it as he will use the external story as a preaching opportunity. And so it's another opportunity for him to make points in terms of how to conduct oneself. So we just need to be aware of this, that there is this 3 storylines that are going. There is the story that Narad Muni is saying. There is the interpretation of the metaphor, second storyline. And the third storyline is Prabhupada commenting on the external story from a preaching perspective. So that's what Prabhupada here says, that he makes his joint being attracted by beautiful women. Now, that's not really what the metaphor is. The jiva does not come really looking for beautiful women, but Prabhupada is basically talking about the situation of one who is conditioned. And one of the things that continues to bind the person is sexual desires. Prabhupada later on says that every living entity has the freedom to be attracted by material nature or to stand as a hero and resist that attraction. It is simply a question of the living entity being attracted or not being attracted. Right? Very important point that's being made, that essentially what this story is doing and what Prabhupada is doing is that they're giving the control back to the jiva. Right? So understanding that being conditioned is a choice, it now empowers the jiva to break that condition. Right? A person is captured in a room, as long as he thinks that the door is locked from outside, he will continue to live in that room. But somebody comes and tells him that actually you can open the door anytime and walk out. It's in your control. Now the whole paradigm changes. And this is one of the important messages that comes out from this story. Okay, moving on to verse 26. Katvam kanjapala shakshi kasyasyaha kutaha sati imamupa purim bhiru kim chikshasi samshame kim chikirshasi samshame. My dear Lotuside, kindly explain to me, where are you coming from? Who are you? And whose daughter you are? You appear very chaste. What is the purpose of your coming here? What are you trying to do? So these are the nature of the questions that the jiva will ask of material intelligence. Now, intrinsically, the soul is all-knowing, right? Satchitanand, it knows everything. However, we see that Puranjan is asking this question as if he does not know her. So this points to the bewilderment of the jiva. Right? So the point is that the bewilderment of the jiva precedes the relationship with the material intelligence. He's asking questions that he should know. So it's not that the material intelligence is the sole cause of the bewilderment of the jiva. He is the cause of it. He has already been bewildered by his desires. He's astonished by this lady. He's astonished by the material intelligence. So he's asking all these questions. Srila Prabhupada once again comments on the external storyline, and he says that questions are good, but one should ask the right questions. The right questions are about spiritual topics. So in order to make advancement, one should learn to ask the right questions. Right? Prabhupada says one needs to inquire about the human form of life. The first aphorism in the Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Later he says the living entity is always connected with a certain amount of intelligence. But in the human form of life, the living entity must inquire about his spiritual identity. So Prabhupada talks about the importance of inquiry in terms of getting out of this conditioning, asking right questions. So continuing on this line, again, this has nothing to do with the allegory, but important preaching point. So doubt and faith are always at loggerheads. They're always opposed to one another. The nature of faith is that it instills confidence, especially in the unseen reality. Nature of faith is that it results in leading a life that is based on values that have not been personally experienced in the past. Right? Many times we live our life based on a past experience. We do something, we learn from it, and then we do. But the nature of faith is that we live our life simply based on the dictates of the scriptures, not based on our past experience. Right? So that's the big impact of faith. Now, doubt, on the other hand, the nature of doubt is that it will make the person continuously suspicious about the unseen future. So, because of doubt, the person is very reluctant to make any movements. Right? So, sometimes when you go and preach Krishna consciousness to a person who has faith will quickly adopt the different aspects of the practice. They'll start chanting and they will give up onion garlic, whatever it is. Why? Because faith. They don't have any personal experience in the past, but they have faith. Now, another person who doubts, they will continuously keep asking for validation. And because of that, they will move very, very slowly. Now, one may feel that faith and doubt are opposite to one another. So what to do when a person is in the situation of doubt? The trick is to convert doubt into inquiry. When doubt is converted to sincere inquiry, then the faith becomes both logical and reasonable. And this is something in our life also, that if we learn the art of transforming doubt into inquiry, it will strengthen our faith. Ultimately, we will progress on the axis of faith. But what is holding us back is doubt. right? So, and if you're able to convert doubt into inquiry, then that will actually increase our faith and improve our progress. So both of them need to be together. So faith without inquiry, it is dogmatic. It can be even violent, right? And superstition. And doubt without faith is essentially something that paralyzes the person. The person is not able to go anywhere. So therefore, the scriptures teach us to have deep faith supported by extensive inquiry. It's called deep faith because it is actually logic. And not only does it have logic, it gives one the ability to trust that is beyond logic. Right? Because every time we take a step, we cover new grounds. So as our inquiry grows, as our faith grows, we also realize more and more things. But there is more that remains to be realized. Just like when a person is walking, every step that he takes, he covers some ground, but there is still ground to be covered ahead. So Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita 3.3, he comments that both the yogas are interdependent as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So Prabhupada is bringing forth a preaching point for us. If you have to make progress, then faith and inquiry are both very, very important. If we do not inquire, our faith will not grow. When we are preaching to others, then if we see doubt, then somehow we have to convert that doubt into inquiry. And that will feed into the person's faith. Okay. Moving on to the next verse, 27. Kayeta nupatayeta ekadas mahabataha etava lalana shubru koyam te he puraha saraha. My dear lotus-eyed, who are those 11 strong bodyguards with you? And who are those 10 specific servants? Who are those women following the 10 servants? And who is the snake that is preceding you? So you can obviously guess each one of them indicates something. And I have sent to Prem Kishore Prabhu a table in which all the metaphors with the underlying meanings are given, mostly based on Bhagavad Subodhini. Mostly it's based from that. Some cases based on Prabhupada's purpose, I have made minor changes. For the most part, it's based on Bhagavad Subodhini. So as we go through, you don't have to take notes. Those tables should be able to help you. Okay. So moving on. Previously, we saw that Puranjan had questioned about the woman, right? Who are you? Where have you come from? Etc. etc. Now he's questioning her paraphernalia, right? So he says that who are those 11 strong bodyguards and the 10 specific servants. So the 10 specific servants are essentially the 10 senses. So what all does material intelligence come with? This will essentially explain that. So along with it comes the 10 senses, which are the 5 karmendriyas and the 5 jnanendriyas. Right. So he says that there are 11 bodyguards, out of which there are 10 servants. Right? So of the 11 bodyguards, there are 10 senses. The 11th is the mind. And here the distinction is made that the mind works under the control of the intelligence, right? Because from the perspective of Sankhya also, this is what we understand, that mind works under the control of the intelligence. So one of the servants. Then he asked that who are those women following the 10 servants? Okay, so Prabhupada explains that the hundreds of women under the jurisdiction of the senses are addressed as lalana. The mind works under the intelligence, and under the mind are the 10 senses. Under the 10 senses are innumerable desires to be fulfilled. So these are the unlimited. So the 10 servants are the 10 senses. Each of that servant has unlimited number of women who are following him. And these are essentially the innumerable desires that are linked with each of the senses. Now, there is a snake that is proceeding. Right? The snake is essentially prana, or the life air. So as long as the vital force is there, the mind works. And under the mind, the senses work, and the senses give rise to material desires. Right? So that Prabhupada explains is the hierarchy. That under prana is the intelligence, or prana protects the intelligence. Under intelligence is the mind, and under the mind are the 10 senses, and linked to the 10 senses are the innumerable desires. So Prabhupada says all this paraphernalia simply constitutes different sources of anxiety. But one who is surrendered to the personality of Godhead and who leaves all business to him is freed from such anxiety. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj advises a person who has taken to the materialistic way of life, which is never permanent but always temporary, to take shelter of the personality of Godhead. Okay, moving on to verse 28. Tvam hir bhavanya asathvagarapatim vinchinvati kim munivadraho vane tvadangrikama samastakamam kopadmakosha patita karagra. My dear beautiful girl, you're exactly like the goddess of fortune, or the wife of Lord Shiva, or the goddess of learning, the wife of Lord Brahma. Although you must be one of them, I see that you are loitering in this forest. Indeed, you are as silent as the great sages. Is it that you are searching after your own husband? Whoever your husband may be, simply by understanding that you are so faithful to him, he will come to possess all opulences. I think you must be the goddess of fortune, but I do not see the lotus flower in your hand. Therefore, I am asking you where you have thrown that lotus. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that this verse talks about the glorification of intelligence by the jiva. So a living entity considers his own intelligence to be excellent and attractive to all people due to lack of discernment. And Prabhupada actually expands on this. So what are the aspects of the girl that is attracting Puranjan? So he says that you're shy. Actually, he says that your shyness personified. She has covered her face and her eyes. So he's not only appreciating the shyness of the girl, but is actually becoming more and more attracted to her because of that shyness. So what does this mean? This means that the conditioned jiva is attracted by the perceived sweetness of intelligence. Then he asks that, are you the wife of Shiva? Which is another way of saying that you're as beautiful as Bhavani, Parvati Devi. Then he says, are you the wife of Brahma? Which is another way of saying that you're as intelligent as Saraswati. And then he says, are you the wife of Lord Vishnu? Which is his way of saying that you are opulent as Lakshmi. And then he says that your husband is probably very opulent because you are faithful. So he's appreciating the quality of chastity in the woman. And he says you're silent as a sage, which means that you are controlled, you control the senses. And he says that you're missing a lotus flower. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says the lotus bud is the discerning power of the jiva. It is under her control. But no one can see it because she has thrown it away. Right? So in the nature of, one of the nature of material intelligence is that it causes the jiva to lose its discerning power between material and spiritual, between good and bad. So he asks her that, are you looking for a suitable husband? So when a man asks a woman this question, he's actually thinking of wanting to be her husband. So the answer that he's hoping to get is that I do not have a husband. And so he's asking that if you do not have a husband, then are you thinking of a prospective husband? To see that if he is qualified to be that husband. So this is an example of bhog ichha, or the desire for enjoyment. Srila Prabhupada gives some practical insight based on this observation. He comments that these questions also indicate that the jiva, in its excessive attraction to its own intelligence, becomes bewildered. So what does the statement mean? Excessive intelligence, attraction to one's own intelligence. Right? So this is essentially the jiva not listening to the Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So all three are giving instructions, but the jiva is so enamored by his own intelligence that my intelligence is beautiful like Bhavani. My intelligence is Saraswati. My intelligence is opulent. My intelligence is faithful, which means that my intelligence will never mislead me. And because of that infatuation, the person is simply not open to outside advice. We all have experienced and we all still suffer from it. To some extent, we have opened our intelligence, but there is still this second guessing that goes on. Once a disciple of Srila Prabhupada came to him and said that, in all your classes, you say the same things, that you're not the body, and You should chant, surrender to Krishna. So why do you keep repeating the same thing? And Prabhupada said, because you don't get it. And so in his mind, the person was thinking that I already know this. And Prabhupada was looking at it from a spiritual perspective, that you think you know it, but actually what you know is simply the external manifestation. All that you have is some information, but you don't have the knowledge to act upon it. And the barrier is this bhoga ichcha, this desire in the jiva to enjoy. And for that, it has lots of faith on its own intelligence. So Prabhupada says that the material world cannot be enjoyed by any living entity. If one so desires to enjoy it, he immediately becomes a demon like Ravan, Hiranyakashipu, or Kamsa. Prabhupada gives that example of Ravan trying to steal Sita Devi from Lord Ram, which is what materialists do. They try to enjoy opulence separate from Lord Vishnu, and because of that, they are vanquished. So one of the important aspects of intelligence is to recognize the limitation of intelligence. When one recognizes that, one is open to take guidance. I remember once we had a stall in Rath Yatra, and I had the bookstall, and the person, so it was a very good preaching opportunity. A person came, he was Indian bodied, and what we do is we picked up Bhagavad Gita. I said, have you read the Bhagavad Gita? I know. Yes, I've read it. Do you like the message? Yes. I know everything. So he was so much taken in by his own knowledge, or so-called knowledge, that he was unwilling even to listen. Forget about taking a book or wanting to read it. Okay, moving on to verse 29. Nasham varorva anyatama bhuvisprak purim imam vira varena shakam arasi alankritam advar karmana lokam param shri ivayagya. Oh, greatly fortunate one, it appears that you are none of the woman. I have mentioned because I see that your feet are touching the ground. But if you are some woman of this planet, you can, like the goddess of fortune, who accompanied by Lord Vishnu, increases the beauty of Vaikuntha planets, also increase the beauty of this city by associating with me. You should understand that I am a great hero and a very powerful king on this planet. So here we see a stronger manifestation in the king to associate with the woman. So this represents the nature of the conditioned jiva to enjoy materially. Prabhupada says that the word bhuvisprak mentioned in this verse is very significant. When the demigods come to the planet, they do not touch the ground. Puranjan could understand that the girl did not belong to the transcendental world or the higher planetary system because her feet were touching the ground. So previously he had said that you could be Bhavani or Saraswati or Lakshmi. Now he is negating that. The reason he's doing that is to show that she is suitable for him. The fact that Puranjan does not want to enjoy with Lakshmi Devi or Bhavani or Saraswati indicates that he understands his position. Right? So he's taking sustenance from the fact that her feet are touching the ground. So she's not a celestial lady. So he says, therefore, you are suitable for me. So this means that there is consideration in him that she is inferior to the divine ladies. Or in other words, the jiva is aware of the fact that material intelligence is fallible. So this is an important consideration, because while it is there is hope. If the jiva was completely bewildered, if he thought that this lady is the goddess of fortune, then why would he have to look for anything else? What would be the reason for him to even inquire? But here we see that he is acknowledging the fact that you are not the supreme. He's still attracted to her. In fact, he gets more attracted to her. But the fact that he is saying that this is not the supreme intelligence means that there is a supreme intelligence there. And this is the realization that opens the heart of the jiva to instructions from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Otherwise, there would be no hope. Right? So when Narad Muni instructed Vyas, at that time, Vyasadeva was at a very exalted platform. He had compiled the entire Vedic scriptures, written the Vedanta Sutras. And he could have asked Narad, what have you written? The Narad had written the Narad Pancharatrika Sutras. Right? But the greatness of Vyasadeva was that he recognized the fallibility of his own intelligence. He recognized the superiority of spiritual intelligence. And the result is Bhagavatam. Right? So that realization comes to the rescue. Now, while he recognizes she is not Lakshmi, he says that you can follow the footsteps of Lakshmi Devi. So Lakshmi Devi increases the beauty of Vaikuntha. With me, you can make this world opulent. So the fact that he is aspiring to compare spiritual opulence with material pleasure indicates his state of bewilderment. Right? So the jiva in its pristine state would never compare material pleasure to spiritual pleasure. But here he is saying that you may not be Lakshmi, but just like Lakshmi Devi makes Vaikuntha opulent, you and me, we can make this world opulent, right? So he thinks that he can get the same kind of pleasures that he was getting in the spiritual world. He also says that I am a great hero and a powerful king, and she should enjoy with him. So we see that he is trying to seduce her while he is being seduced by her beauty. So this demonstrates the spirit of mutual exploitation in the material world. So in the spiritual world, there is the spirit of mutual service. In the material world, there is a spirit of mutual exploitation. So the jiva is attracted to the material intelligence because he thinks that he can enjoy through it. And at the same time, he is being enjoyed or exploited by the material energy of the Lord. So this becomes the basis of the material world. Prabhupada says that a man who wants to enjoy a woman and a woman who wants to enjoy a powerful, opulent man. Every living entity who possesses such material desire is called a Purusha, an enjoyer. Superficially, it appears that the woman is the enjoyed and the man is the enjoyer, but internally, everyone is an enjoyer, or everyone is trying to be an enjoyer. And Prabhupada said this is what is called Maya. Okay, I'll do one more verse, then after that pause for any discussion. Yadeshamapanga vikhanditendriyam sarvida bhava smita vibramad bhruva tvayopashashto bhagavan mano bhavaha prabhadate thanu grahan shobhane. Certainly, your glancing upon me today has very much agitated my mind. Your smile, which is full of shyness, but at the same time lusty, is agitating the most powerful Cupid within me. Therefore, O most beautiful, I ask you to be merciful upon me. So this verse speaks about the jiva's attraction to material intelligence as a way to satisfy his desire for sense gratification. And this, in turn, bewilders the spiritual intelligence of the jiva. So Puranjan, he is accepting his own lust, right? So he's saying, I'm agitated. And he's also acknowledging the lust in the woman. Like he said, your smile has shyness, but at the same time it is lusty. So the senses and the sense objects are designed to mutually attract each other. So Puranjan accepts that he is agitated, which means that he has lost discernment. Vishwanath Chakravarti says his eyes of knowledge has been shattered. So he is attacked by the impression of sense objects produced through intelligence, and is looking for enjoyment of the sense objects such as sound, touch, etc. Prabhupada once again uses this for preaching purposes. He extends the allegory to reality in the material world. He says that everyone has lusty desires within, and as soon as one is agitated by the movement of a beautiful woman's eyebrows, the Cupid within immediately throws his arrows at the heart. Thus, one is quickly conquered by the eyebrows of the beautiful woman. When one is agitated by lusty desire, his senses are attracted by all kinds of vishaya, enjoyable things like sound, touch, form, smell, and taste. These attractive sense objects oblige one to come under the control of a woman. In this way, the conditioned life of a living entity begins. Conditional life means being under the control of a woman. And certainly the living entity is always at the mercy of a woman or a man. So Prabhupada, even though he typically says woman, but here he says woman or man to indicate that. So, just from a convenience perspective, everywhere Prabhupada would say woman or man or etc., it would become very very pedantic. So even though typically Prabhupada and the scriptures, they talk about the influence of the woman on the man, but the understanding is that it goes both ways. That just like women inspire lust in man, man inspires lust in women. Just like the intelligence of a man gets bewildered, the intelligence of a woman also gets bewildered. Okay, so let me pause here and see if there is any comments or discussion.
It's really a powerful topic, Prabhu, but very minimal with my limited vision. Why Puranjana is only focusing on this lust, or it is more like power, greed, other things are also matter, right?
You're right. And lust is not always in the sexual connotation. Right? Lust means just a strong desire to possess something. Typically, it is used in the context of a man-woman, but that's not the only way that lust exists. Lust could exist in terms of prestige or power or opulence or fame or any of those. Typically, we see that it is used in this context for two reasons. One, it is the most powerful urge. And second, as Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, that it's kind of like Freudian philosophy, that everything else is a transformation of the sexual urge. Now, it's not that the scriptures make that statement, but if you look at the purport of Srila Prabhupada, he makes this point that when a man is attracted to a woman, agitated by lusty desires, and then he has these desires to enjoy things like sound, touch, form, smell, and taste, right? So in a way, these desires result in a man being attracted to a woman and vice versa. So yeah, I would agree with you. A more balanced perspective would be to consider this as a placeholder for all material desires.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. We know that in the spiritual world, a relationship between, of course, Krishna and the gopis is the highest. And in this material world, we know it's a reflection, and it's the contrary, total opposite. And why it has been done like this? Because the living entity in the material world is very vulnerable, and as if it's it's like a maze. The more you go there, the deeper you go, and you get lost and lost and lost and lost. And we know Krishna is very merciful, but why he put like such a intricate and difficult maze system to entangle the living entity more and more.
So basically, Krishna puts it not to entangle the jiva, but to fulfill the desires of the jiva. So the whole material world is constructed, point is made by Lord Kapila in the third canto. The whole material world is constructed by Krishna to satisfy the desires of the jiva. So these desires for enjoyment, desires for being the center of attention, desires for material enjoyment. This is what the jiva comes with to the material world, and Krishna essentially responds to it. Now, one might say that Krishna is not obliged to respond to it. He could have created the world differently, right? But that would not have changed the desires of the jiva. Those same desires would still be there, right? So it's not that if Krishna had created a world in which there was no lust, the jiva would not fall down. Jiva would still fall down, and he would still be even more miserable in the material world, because he has the strong desires. Even though they're perverted, he has no way to understand that while experiencing them would result in more misery. Now at least he can experience that misery and get a sense that this is not where it is meant to, where I'm meant to be, and try to go back.
When the jiva get frustrated by their own endeavor to be happy, and happiness never comes.
That is true. We have experience of this in this lifetime, so many lifetimes. Constant endeavor for happiness, which is ephemeral. It comes and it goes, and at some point this realization starts happening that this pursuit is not worth it. One of the devotees here, he was sharing about the last moments of his father. So he's of course a devotee, but his father was not devotee. In fact, he was not very favorable to Krishna consciousness. But he was very attached to his son, and towards the very end, when he was in hospice, he knew that he had only a few days to live. He was sharing this. He was saying that to his son that I just don't want to do this again. This is really exhausting. Right? And then basically he didn't have a lot of knowledge. He didn't talk much about spirituality with his son and vice versa. But it's just that deep realization that he had, that you don't want to do this again. Get a body, try and enjoy, suffer, die, do it again. So one way or the other, Krishna tries to rescue us. It's like saying that Krishna is helping us despite ourselves. But he's also limited by the fact that we have a free will, and we will exercise that. So he's limited by his ability to help us. As parents, we have a lot of first-hand experience of this, right? We try to help our kids. We know that this is good for them. And we tell them, we explain it to them. We sometimes give allurement, sometimes chastisement. But the kids are kids. They do their own thing. At the end of the day, you just have to be, especially for devotee parents, right? You want your kids to be good devotees. And some become devotees, some don't. So if you talk to the parents whose kids are not devotees, you can see the frustration that they give everything to the children, right? They create a conducive environment, they give encouragement, allurements, and the kid just says, sorry. The parents know that this is the worst decision they can make, but what can they do? They still continue to support the kid. It's not that they cut the kid out or basically break relationship. That's to a great extent, that's what Krishna and us, that's the dynamics going on.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu, I can hear you.
Regarding this knowledge, faith, and doubt, this trio, you explained about how Prabhupada was repeating the same thing, and the disciple asked why you were saying the same thing again and again. Prabhupada said, because you don't get it. So you nicely put it that we know only superficially or only the information aspect of it, we don't apply that deeply in our practice. So, you said it's because of our bhoga icha, or our tendency to enjoy. So I was thinking it's also due to our doubt and lack of faith in the knowledge that we gain, like in the sense we are the spirit soul, we are not the body, we are the spirit soul. That knowledge, the faith is still not complete. It's still, there is a doubt in there. And so I'm just trying to understand, is that doubt, or is the doubt is a result of our trying to enjoy what the comfort zone that we have? We don't want to give up the comfort zone on the one hand, and as a result of that, we still doubt the knowledge that we have, because it requires stepping outside of the comfort zone in order to apply that knowledge and gain faith in that knowledge. So is my understanding correct? So therefore the tendency to enjoy is the primary cause of the doubt? It looks like that to me, but can you please elaborate on that, or is it something that is it?
It's a very good observation. Based on my understanding, it's the other way around. That bhogicha is essentially a symptom of the two things that you mentioned, lack of faith and lack of knowledge, or lack of knowledge is synonymous to doubts. So if somebody came to you today and said, Prabhu, give up all this and simply sit and chant Hare Krishna, right? And if you had complete faith in that person, then you would do that. And the reason you would not do it is because you have doubts about that person. Now, recognizing the fact that faith cannot be built overnight, that's the process that is recommended, that the enemy of faith is doubt, and the enemy of doubt is knowledge. So the way to get knowledge is inquiry. Right? So through inquiry, we address doubt. With the doubt going away, the faith strengthens. Faith strengthens, then several things happen. Our bhogicha becomes weak. Our desire to serve Krishna becomes strong. Which is why the scriptures, they address it at this fundamental level. They try to do a causal, root cause impact on it. Through pastimes, they try to instill faith in this, and through philosophy, they try to address our doubt. When we read about pastimes, then we say that if Gajendra can be saved, we can be saved. If Krishna is consorting with the gopis, maybe he can spend time with us. So that each pastime, it instills some amount of faith in us. And then we read the philosophy that we are not the body, we are the soul, and Krishna has this nature, sambandhagyan, etc. That takes away the doubts. Right? So today, if somebody comes to you and says that Prabhu, you should focus 100% on the material opulence. Right? So with the knowledge that you have, you would not be able to do that. Because at the end of the day, you will say that what's the point in this material opulence? It's here today, gone tomorrow. It's whatever I'm destined to get, I can get. I can endeavor 1,000,000 times over. So all that knowledge of karma, knowledge of the material world, that will impede your bhogicha, right? Because you have that knowledge. And by associating with devotees, by reading the scriptures, your faith grows. Is that okay?
No problem. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to verse 31. Tvadananam subru sutaralochanam Vyalam vinilalka vrinda samvratam Uniyame darshayaval guvachakam Yad vridaya nabhi mukham suchi smite. My dear girl, your face is so beautiful with your nice eyebrows and eyes with your bluish hair scattered about. In addition, very sweet sounds are coming from your mouth. Nonetheless, you are so covered with shyness that you do not see me face to face. I therefore request you, my dear girl, to smile and kindly raise your head to see me. So this verse talks about the desire of the jiva to completely enjoy materially. And the reason the jiva has this desire, because that is what he is used to. The nature of the soul is Anandamaya. In the liberated state, the jiva is used to the highest amount of bliss. So when he becomes materially contaminated, the desire still remains the same. He wants to He wants to enjoy completely. So although the jiva is bewildered by material intelligence since time immemorial, Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the fact that Puranjan is asking all these questions to the lady means that he keeps forgetting it. One of the symptoms of material intelligence is forgetfulness. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says the lusty jiva with no memory shows his bewilderment. The jiva says, "O avidya, ignorance, you have cheated me of spiritual bliss, but now provide me with the wealth of sense objects so that I can enjoy. Give up your stubbornness. So when Puranjan asked to see the complete face, he says that you have hidden your face, but show me your full face. So he's expressing his desire to enjoy the material world completely. So he says that your face has beautiful features. So the face has the sense of taste and smell and touch. So essentially, he prays to enjoy with all the senses. So Prabhupada says that this condition of life is called avidya. Opposed to this avidya is real knowledge. Ishopanishad distinguishes between vidya and avidya, knowledge and ignorance. By avidya one becomes conditioned, and by vidya one becomes liberated. Puranjan admits here that he is attracted by avidya. Now he wishes to see the complete features of avidya and so requests the girl to raise her head so that he can see her face to face. He thus wishes to see the various features that make avidya attractive. Right, so this is Prabhupada explaining the allegory. Prabhupada also comments on how a man gets attracted to a woman. Right, so we see that again, Prabhupada running a third line of instructions, commenting on the allegory from as if it is factual. As a Puranjan there's actually a person Puranjan being attracted to a woman, so Prabhupada uses that to talk about it. So typically, when we see allegories, they use one situation to explain another. Right? And the reason they do this is because they explain a more subtle situation by comparing it with a more gross situation. Right? If somebody says that the woman is as beautiful as the moon. Right? So describing beauty is very subjective and difficult, but people see the moon, they see that it is effulgent, they see that it is attractive. So that's a metaphor, right? So you take something that is more readily discernible and use that to describe something that is more subtle. Like Krishna says that the soul cannot be burnt or cut, right? So these are not the identifying features of the soul, right? The soul, what he wants to describe is that the soul is indestructible. But because in the material world, people are used to things being destroyed by being burnt or cut, etc., he's using that as a simile in this case, actually. So now we will see how the lady responds to Puranjan. Okay, verse 32. Naraduvacha itham puranjanam nari yachamana madhiravat abhyananda tam viram hasanti veera mohita. Narad continued, my dear king, when Puranjan was so attracted and impatient to touch the girl and enjoy her, the girl also became attracted by his words and accepted his request by smiling. By this time, she was certainly attracted by the king. So Narad Muni describes Puranjan as Adhiravat. So Adhiravat, Adhir means foolish. Adhiravat means seemingly foolish. So Narad Muni calls him Adhiravat because the jiva by nature is not foolish. But when he misuses his free will, then he begins to act in a foolish way. So such a jiva is attracted to the sweetness of the sense objects by intelligence. So just as the jiva is attracted by intelligence, the intelligence is also attracted to jiva. So here it says that the Nari, the lady, she is also getting attracted to Puranjan. So this is a two-way attraction. The jiva is attracted to material intelligence, and material intelligence is attracted to jiva. So Vishwanath Chakravarti said Narad Muni is also giving a hint that this is actually the story of Prachina Bari. Prabhupada comments that by this incident we can understand that when a man is aggressive and begins to woo a woman, the woman becomes attracted to the man. This process is described in the Bhagavatam as Pumsastriya Mithuni Bhava Metam. This attraction is enacted on the platform of sexual life. Thus, the sex impulse is the platform of material engagement. This conditional life, the platform of material sense and enjoyment, is the cause of the forgetfulness of spiritual life. Yeah, next verse, 33. Na vidam vayam samya kartaram purusha shabha atmanascha parashyapi gotram nam chayat kritam. The girl said, O best of human beings, I do not know who has begotten me. I cannot speak to you perfectly about this, nor do I know the names or the origin of the associates with me. So in 10 verses, the woman will now speak to Puranjan. So if you remember earlier on, Maharaj Puranjan had put all these questions. Who are you? Where are you from? Who are these people with you? So now she is answering them. However, what is apparent is that she is attracted to Puranjan. So the allegory talks about the mutual attraction between the conditioned jiva and material intelligence. Now, one may say that one can understand the jiva being attracted to intelligence. But how can one understand the intelligence experience attraction to jiva? The jiva is sentient. The intelligence is not. Right? So how can it be? How can something that is not sentient experience attraction? So the way to understand this, the way to understand Puranjani's attraction to Puranjan is, and since we are in allegory land, so we can use another allegory that, for example, a person goes to buy a car at a dealership. Right? So in the dealership, there are several cars with different features. Now, without a driver, the car is simply a lump of metal, right? It has no ability. It cannot drive, cannot do anything. It is jada. What the car has, it has several attributes. It has a make and model and color. It has technical specifications that it can go so fast, and it has all these features with it. So when a man is at the dealership looking at the car, essentially the car is now speaking to the man. What is the car saying? That I can take you at speeds of 100 miles per hour. I can do 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. I have this beautiful red exterior. I have leather upholstered seat. I will give you a comfortable ride. Right? So this is one way that you can say that now the car is attracted to the person because the person has the ability to buy the car. The person is attracted to the car because the car has the attributes that he's looking for. And the car is attracted to the person because the person has the money that can buy. If another person comes and the person has no ability to buy the car, it still has all those features, but the car is not going to be attracted to the person because he can't afford it, right? Now, when the person buys the car, now he's able to activate the functions that the car had promised. The car has said, I can go 100 miles per hour, I can do all this. Right now, factually speaking, the car can't do anything. But when the man takes possession of it, now the car can deliver on all its promises. So this is the relationship between the jiva and the material intelligence. The material intelligence is not sentient, but it comes with all these features. It comes with the senses, comes with the sense objects, comes with the ability to materially enjoy. So all these are attributes that are sitting on the intelligence. Now, what is the one thing that intelligence is looking at? It is looking at consciousness. Because consciousness is the only thing that can activate intelligence. So when the jiva comes with consciousness. And the material intelligence, it comes with all these abilities. When the two come together, then the consciousness activates the intelligence, and all these abilities, they manifest. So that is why Puranjani is, so we are seeing that she will be asking questions and answering and flirting with the king. Later on, we'll see that she'll get angry with the king. These are all the attributes of the intelligence in its interaction with Puranjan. So Puranjan is asking her. He says that, are you an apsara who has come to bewilder a sage? Right. So he says that, or he had said that, are you an apsara? And the underlying spiritual meaning is that the material intelligence does not know. So Puranjani said, I don't know any of the answer to any of the questions that you're asking. So the underlying meaning is that material intelligence does not know the Lord or any of the spiritual truths that are revealed in the scriptures. So Puranjan was asking existential questions. Where are you from? How are you? Why are you existing? Right? She says, I don't know anything. Right? That's not the nature of material intelligence. Prabhupada says that the girl is expressing the actual position of the living entity. She cannot tell Puranjan her father's name because she does not know where she has come from. Nor does she know why is she present in the place. She frankly says that she does not know anything about all this. This is the position of the living intelligence in the material world. There are so many scientists, philosophers, and big leaders, but they do not know where from they have come. Right? So that's the nature of material intelligence. They may know a lot about matter, but they do not know about spiritual knowledge. Okay, we'll do a couple of more verses and then pause after that. Verse 34. Ihadya santamatmana vidamna tataha param yeneyam nirmita vira puri sharanam atmanaha. O great hero, we only know that we are existing in this place. We do not know what will come after. Indeed, we are so foolish that we do not care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. So, after the last exchange, Puranjan says that, do you know anything? And she says, I know nothing. She says, I do not know anything. And then she demonstrates that, right? She says, I do not know by whom this city was built, which means that material intelligence by itself will not be able to know where this material world is coming from. Right? So many scientists are trying to find the Big Bang and etc. But the nature of material intelligence is that it will never be able to discern where the material world is coming from. And then she says, we do not know what will come after, which is essentially the purpose of life. Right? So people will say, well, we know the purpose of life. It's to make money and enjoy. Right? But that's not the real purpose of life. These questions cannot be answered by material intelligence. They can only be answered by spiritual intelligence. That's why Prabhupada says that the lack of Krishna consciousness is called ignorance. Right? Because ignorance means not being aware of your position, your existence, the existence of that which is around you. Okay, moving on. We'll do one last verse, 35. Ete shakhaya shakhyo me naranarya chamana suktayam mai jagrati nagoyam palayan purim. My dear gentleman, all these men and women with me are known as my friends. And the snake, who always remains awake, protects the city during my sleeping hours. So much I know. I do not know anything beyond this. So Puranjan had asked that, who are your followers? So she said that they are my friends. So the male friends are the senses, and the female friends are the actions of the senses, the object of the senses. And these constantly accompany material intelligence. And she says the snake protects the city when I sleep. Now, remember, this conversation is happening in the city of 9 gates. Right? Because Puranjan, when he was wandering around, then he accidentally stumbles on this city of 9 gates. And he enters the city of 9 gates, and then he comes across this woman. So this woman is a resident of that city. Puranjan is visiting it. Right? So that's why he's saying that the snake protects, she says the snake protects the city when I sleep. So the snake essentially is the prana, or the life force, and it protects the body of the jiva when the intelligence is at rest. So when one is dreaming, the senses do not function. And when one is in deep sleep, then even the mind and the intelligence do not function. So then one may question that what is to stop one from dying at that time? And the prana is the one that remains active. So Prabhupada says that when the living entity gives up this material body, the vital forces still remains intact and is carried to another material body. This is called transmigration. And Prabhupada said the vital force always remains. And then he explains the analogy of the snake, that the snake lives by eating the air that passes within its body. Air is expected in the form of breathing, and as long as breath is there, one can understand that a sleeping man is alive. Even when the gross body is asleep, the vital forces remain active and alive to protect the body. Thus, the snake is described as living and eating air to keep the body fit for life. Okay, so I'll pause here and see if there is any discussion.
In one of
I see a comment from Varshana that can't hear me. Is that just her or everybody?
Now I can hear you, Prabhu. I had to log off and log back in. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Prem Kishore Prabhu.
Yeah, in one of, I don't remember, the one who has no memory will show bewilderness, right? It is due to lust. How in our sadhana we do lack memory as well, right? How do we want to take that? Like, even though whatever we try to, however we try to stress, is it like lack of faith or lack of focus is the reason?
So when you say we don't have memory in sadhana, can you elaborate on that?
Sufficient. We don't have sufficient memory, right? It all depends on. Will it be dependent on the lack of faith or focus? Is that the question?
So I'm still trying to figure out, when you say we don't have memory in sadhana, does it mean that somebody tells you to do something and then we don't do it, we forget about it?
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. One of the biggest impediment in us accepting instructions is lack of faith. And you think about it, somebody tells you and you have complete faith in the person, then you just do it. The big difference between the disciples in the early days of ISKCON and current days is faith. Right? If you look at the biography of some of the earlier disciples of Prabhupada, they had a lot of faith in Prabhupada. Prabhupada would say, do this, do this, do this. And they would just do it just because Prabhupada was asking them to do it. And through that, they made a lot of advancement. Right? They were not necessarily the most scripturally learned, but they had a lot of faith in Prabhupada's instructions.
Yes.
Okay, so if there are...
Prabhu, just following up on that question, what is the reason why people had so much faith in Prabhupada and now that is lacking? What is the reason? Is it?
That's a good question. It's a question that's often asked, and I can give you one, and there are many answers to it, but I can give you one answer. So I asked to a sannyasi, and he said that the whole notion about trying to light up damp wood. So if you have a wood that is damp, and then you try to light it up, there are two things that go on over there. One is how strong the flame is, and the second is how wet the wood is. When Prabhupada said something, then it instilled a lot of faith in the person. That's the big difference between reading and discussing. Right? Because when you read something, you gather the information, what it is. But when somebody tells you, then the person also infuses that with his own realization. Right? When Prabhupada was handing out cards saying chant and be happy, right? So people would read it and they would be inspired. But when Prabhupada would say to them that I humbly request you to please chant, and that would be like, for many people, that was it. That was a game changer. So it was the potency of Prabhupada. And like I said, there's the strength of the flame and how wet the wood is. So difficult to comment on how wet the wood then and now is, but sometimes people say that, the earlier disciples were specially sent to help Prabhupada. So they quickly took to the message. I think the quality of wood nowadays is more damp than it was earlier on. In the Bhakti Shastri discussion last week only, we were having this, one of the persons was saying that this urgency to go back to Godhead, that seems to have disappeared. Like during the time of Srila Prabhupada, everybody had a mission that this is going to be our last life and we'll go back to Godhead. And everybody was working towards chanting rounds, serving devotees, pleasing the spiritual master. That urgency is not there. People are a little bit more complacent that if not this life, next life, if not next life, the life after that, at least we have started the process and eventually it will yield results. So to some extent, that urgency was instilled by Prabhupada. Like he would make this point over and over again. And don't flirt with Maya. Make this your last time, last life.
That's a very nice Prabhupada. And also I think Prabhupada also showed his own life with such an urgency. Right?
That is true. That is true. I mean, the very fact that at this stage in his life, he was old and sick, and in one of the memory tapes, one disciple from the 26th Second Avenue, he shares that when he first went to attend a class in 26th Second Avenue, Prabhupada was speaking he speaks with a very thick Bengali accent. So he said that firstly, the words that he was using, I was not familiar with. I was not familiar with the topic. And then Swamiji was speaking with such an accent that I had no idea what he was speaking about. But then I could sense in him that he was very anxiously trying to have us do something. He said, I didn't know what he's asking us to do. But I could see that he was very anxious that we do it. He was almost beseeching us. And he said, that's what got me coming back again and again. That it seems that it is very important to this person. Let me at least try and find out what is that important thing. Right. And then, of course, he got more and more of that message. So that point that you're making is absolutely correct. The Prabhupada not only wanted to instill that urgency in us, but he also demonstrated that urgency in himself, in his speech, in his conduct, in every aspect of his behavior.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll end here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you.